I did a workout with Toby the next day. So Toby's up here too. I'm not sure why, but he came up. He hates it more than I do up here. He ran 5 by 6 minutes. I went off his heart rate. I've got to make that clear because these are terrible paces here. He's not as fit as what he used to be. Yeah, I'm not sure if he's here today, but I'm sure Strava tells all. There's no hiding on there. So we did this from Kurrawa Surf Club running back towards Surfers just before the roadworks. It's a bit of a shame, really. There's a beautiful, well, it's not a beautiful path, but there's a path along the beach that kind of can link up Surfers through to Broad Beach down towards Miami, but there's like construction going on, so they send you onto the road again. So we went out and back. It was a workout that wasn't too impressive, but it was good to get it done. The next day I ran in the morning by myself, and then I doubled around with Reese Edwards for a little bit, and it was pitch black, like dark, and there were still people shouting his name as we ran past.
Really?
Yeah.
They shout your name as well, or just Reese?
No, just Reese. He is a recognisable character. I think it's his. He's got like a real presence because he's tall and he leans forward a lot,
and he looks like an elite runner the way he moves.
Yeah,
his technique is beautiful.
I know. I had to as soon as he turned around, we met each other, and I turned around. I was like, "Oh wow, you feel so bouncy next to me." It's good to see. You can sort of see why he's such a good runner. He's also a character, and I reckon it comes through on the podcast that people feel like they kind of can go up and chat to him because he's so approachable.
And he's really honest.
Yeah, he is. And he was confident too. Like, he was confident when I was running with him. Went out for an hour, ran down to Burleigh. I think I got to Burleigh Heads and back. It's pretty awful going that way. You have to run on the road a fair bit. And it's like, I think I said it last year, that it feels like the town's been built for developers, not for the public. Because all the beachfront stuff just limits like access, and so you end up everyone just walks their dogs on the side of the road. It doesn't feel like they could have made it pretty special up here, but they haven't. I did a workout Saturday arvo after Bree went and ran the half marathon, so I was on dad duties and then got out in the afternoon. Did the same workout actually, 5 by 6 minutes, but just to prove that I was a lot fitter than Toby, I ran to my heart rate this time. It was better. It was 3:16, 19, 19, 13, and 17. The heart rate was a lot higher, but I was looking forward to posting that on Strava and him seeing it when I got back.
How much recovery?
Yeah, 60 or 90?
90 seconds, just walking. Walking for a minute, then I'd jog for a bit. Yeah.
What shoes do you wear?
Alpha 3. And jog the warm-up in Alpha, cool down in Alpha. Real flex out there. And if you fit in, everyone jogs in super shoes up here.
It's not a flex anymore. Even at the expo, you just wear your super shoes everywhere.
Yeah, there's a certain travelling marathoning tourist that also likes to walk in super shoes a lot. Yeah. Don't know whether anyone picked that up, but it's a thing.
It's a Norwegian running thing too. When I met them in Valencia, all had super shoes on for the 20-minute shakeout the day before. Shows people got too much money sometimes.
I get it on the concrete up here. Like, that is a harsh place to run. And I think the only time that I would enjoy it is if I had the most cushioned shoes on. So I can actually see why you would do it up here. Croaks and we would never do it where we live. But, I mean, you could probably tinker with it.
Yeah. If only I had a mate who owned a shoe store who could hook me up with more super shoes.
I'd say I'll give you a discount on that stuff if you want. Today was the main day, the main event. And I jumped in. Banded it, kind of. Race was sold out, so I think I've got a reasonable excuse here, fellas. I know I've gone at people about that before, but I jumped in at 8K to the group that was about 5,000 deep, we were running 4:10s. Jumped in with my friend Carla, who is here. Congrats, Carla. She ran a PB today, so she'll up and about on the beers later. We ran pretty even down. I was surprised that the wind wasn't as bad as it has been the last week. So I thought we got pretty lucky with that. The course was, I found it nice going into the highway actually. I thought it opened up more space. It was a little bit less clogged than what I've seen going through the Broadbeach area on that little alley type area. And then once we turned around, the tailwind wasn't quite as pronounced as what I thought it was. It wasn't as beneficial, I don't think, that people were sort of talking about pre-race. And even the plans we discussed with Carla was to sort of let that wind get her going a lot in that 20K back up to the top, back up to Labrador. But I don't think that it was as directly behind us. I think it was a bit more cross-shore, and I don't think that I think the actual course was a lot more even rather than more one-sided tailwind, headwind today. I jumped off the course at 34K, and then I think it was about 34, and Carla and Will, her husband, ran up to the turnaround, came back, and I jumped in and ran back to the 41, 42K mark.
You
She's not going to get DQ'd. She's not going to get DQ'd, is she?
I don't think so. Look, I don't think she's challenging for
I've been a moose on the loose before, people jumping in and pacing people when they don't have a bib on.
Yeah, but I couldn't buy a ticket.
Well, yeah, we have
the race is sold out.
We have a good relationship
I would
with
have
the
been
Gold
quite
Coast
happy
Marathon.
to buy a ticket.
We may not get paid, Brady, for pacing.
This is exactly what I meant by saying do not record stuff that's on the podcast.
Well, okay, so I ran on the sidewalk next to the race, all the way down to Miami. And then I ran on the footpath all the way back, and it just happened to be next to Carla.
Beautiful.
And I didn't take any gels or electrolyte. I didn't cost them any money, hopefully. But yeah, so that was 30.66K, average 4:10. I got quite hot at the end, pretty dehydrated. I had a high heart rate for most of the run. And it was pissing brown when I got back to the shower. So okay. It was a bit more of an effort than I thought it might be.
Yep. How many Ks for the week?
120, is that right?
I don't know.
I think about 120. About 120.
And Good. Where to from here now, Moose?
Bundoora is in a fortnight. I think, a fortnight. So I've got to go to Bundoora. The second most competitive cross-country in the country. So I had a goal of top 20 last year, didn't get it, came 23rd maybe, 24th. The year before I had a goal of top 50, and I think I just got it. And then this year I think I'm going to go top 35. Not very fit, haven't raced in a long time, haven't done any type fast stuff, but I reckon top 35 is achievable if I have a really good day.
Yeah, you got 2 weeks too. Like this stuff's still got time to kick in. Yeah, I like that. I like that from you.
And long-term plans, like eyes on a marathon?
Oh, it's hard because I don't want to book anything in because I've done that enough where I get disappointed and I start to force things. It's such a cliche call, but I want to be I want to be process-driven, and I don't want goal-driven stuff right now. So I need to just get back to those 2 workouts a week. What I'm going to do is more threshold stuff, like what I've done this week. I don't feel I need to do like all these intricate type specific workouts. I just want to get out there and run threshold intervals. It's probably the most safe workout for my fragility. So I need a break after 6 to 10 minutes worth, but I can do a higher volume. I'll pull up better the next day. I can still get a long run in, and I need to tuck the ego away, the competitiveness on Sundays. So that's going to be the biggest challenge for me.
Love it. You don't have to worry about a bib when you do check out a marathon anyway. Just run it.
It's actually a good call, yeah. And I don't have to register a really slow time if I have a bad day.
Croaks, over to you. What have you been doing? Give us a Monday through to Sunday.
So I kicked the week off with a rest day. I think I spoke about last week that I was going to treat this as a bit of a down week, knowing that I'd sort of secured a spot for Melbourne. So I guess 2 weeks ago my focus was to get to the finish line today, post a respectable time to get one of those time qualifiers for Melbourne. But then once I got an elite start, I'm like, well, there's no point finishing the marathon now. So wanted to just try and give my hip a bit of a chance to sort of settle this week. So I took Monday off. Tuesday, went out to the track for a session with the group. Hip wasn't great warming up. I was a little bit concerned. But once I stopped and did some drills and strides, it sort of loosened up and I felt pretty good for the session. So session was a 2K rep, 2 minutes recovery, then 5 times 400s off 45 seconds recovery, and then I took 2 minutes after the last 400 and did another 2K. So I ran 6:40 for the first 2K, so 3:20. So the plan was to run these at about the pace that I have to pace, but end up being a bit quicker. So 6:40 for the 2K. The 400s were between 70 and 71, which I was actually really happy with that off 45 seconds recovery, because a couple of weeks ago when I was at the track and I was going to do Deeks quarters and I pulled the pin after 2 reps, I was running the 400s in like 75, 76 seconds and felt like I was sprinting. So I was definitely moving better. And then I ran 6:30 for the last 2K. So gave me a fair bit of confidence, although that session during race week, like I'm not running that much faster than what I have to run for like 30 kilometres. So you're like, oh, I got to do this for like close to 2 hours. And like it didn't feel super easy doing that for like 6:30.
There's something in that though for the listeners. Like how many people talk themselves out of what they're going to do on the weekend with how it feels on a Tuesday or Wednesday of race week?
Yeah, and the adrenaline you get from the race, and I'll talk about it when I get to like today's recap. But like you go through like a heap of crowd, and like it's worth 5 seconds a K. Like we definitely accelerated once we got through the crowds. So Wednesday, I got out for 45 minutes just out at Mulligan's at 4:17s. And then flew to the Gold Coast that afternoon actually, because I've had so many issues in the past with like cancelled flights and not getting here last year. I saw flights like in January and they were real cheap on a Wednesday. I said, Viv, can I go Wednesday? And she's like, yeah, just go. So solo trip, business trip, no kids, no wife. So yeah, got up here on Wednesday and then Thursday headed south from Broadbeach for, I guess, close to 5K. Bumped into one of the listeners actually about 500 metres from the turnaround. So he sort of yelled out and then he introduced himself and we ran about 6K together. By this stage I'm rolling sort of 406s because it is quite easy. It's flat, it's concrete, not trails. And I said, his name's Anthony from Brisbane. Shout out to Anthony. What are you running this weekend? He's like, I'm doing the half. I'm like, okay, what are you hoping to run? He's like, under 90 minutes. I'm like, we're running about 10 seconds a K faster than that right now. But he was chatting away and, made the time go pretty quick. Anthony ended up running 87 minutes, so he ran a PB, so it was all good. Didn't ruin his run. And then Friday, I was meant to meet Brady. So Brady was staying here and I was at Broadbeach and he sent me a message saying, I'm going to leave now. I'm not taking my phone, and I was out of my apartment at the time, and I rushed back, got changed, and it had been like 15 minutes, and I thought, I've missed him, so I'll head south.
Hang on, Bruce, pause the story there. If Brady's coming from the north and Croaks is in Broadbeach at the south, which direction would you run if you were Bradley Croker?
Depending on what time you left. So it was about 20. It had been about 20 minutes since you sent that.
I'm a slow jogger.
Yeah.
You know I go slow.
Anyway, I thought I'd missed you, so I headed south. Didn't see Brady, and then Brady turned around before I did, and so I never saw him on the way back either. So I'm tempoing up and down the coast.
Brady, I think that's a win for you.
I know, yeah. Today was hard enough without doing a tempo on Friday.
So I ended up doing 12K at 356s.
Can we... All right, I'm going to jump in here because I've been following all the pros, the elites on Strava. You run faster than any of them up here.
I'm aware. Not come race day, but I wasn't racing either this weekend. So I didn't do it like... I probably would have done a second workout at some point this week, like maybe a 3K at marathon pace or something like that. And so that run sort of substituted for that. So it wasn't a session. Also, what I was doing is on the way down, it was quite windy. I wanted to sort of just check how, because it's different. Like you can run really slow into a headwind and you're like, oh, the wind's not too bad. But when you start actually moving, that's when it starts to impact your effort. So I'm like, I'm just wearing normal trainers. I'll actually like pick it up a little bit just to see how much the wind actually impacts me. And I was finding like 350s wasn't too bad. So I thought, well, if I can feel pretty comfortable running 350s in normal shoes into a pretty strong wind, once I put the race shoes on, it's race day, 325s should feel okay. The only downside of that run was because it was wet and the shoes were a bit old and there's a bit of a camber down the south end, I was just slipping in the shoe a bit and I was starting to get a bit of a hot spot on sort of the outside of my foot. So I was like, don't tell me I'm going to develop some blister before the race. And then Saturday, started in Broadbeach, ran 10 kilometres, headed north so I could bump into the Lululemon shakeout run. So I was with you guys for probably a couple of K.
Couple of minutes and then was off the front. Would be
Couple
more
of K,
accurate.
And then headed back to Broadbeach, so I ran 10K at 4:19s.
Croaks, you You missed the pump-up speech that Brady did, apparently.
I've seen it on Instagram.
I had a few DMs about this.
It wasn't. It was a thank you for
I
coming.
believe there's
speech.
another...
Jess wasn't there, so I was trying to like choose some time.
there's
up
another
before
run
Jess
clubber that lives on the Gold Coast that you were compared to.
Who was
Also
that?
gives
yeah.
pump-up
Cody
speeches.
something? Yeah, I didn't know who this person was, but you said some kind of name.
Yeah, that's what they told me about it also.
All right,
Which brings us, I guess, to today. And so Brady and myself were pacing the lead women. So we had the technical meeting yesterday afternoon, and I was concerned all week that if they still wanted us to, because the plan was to run 72 minutes through halfway, which is fine, and I think I'm fit enough to do that. But I was concerned that predominantly the first 18K would be into a pretty strong headwind, and if they still want 72 minutes, then that's probably the equivalent of me running well under 70, which probably wouldn't leave much left in the tank for the next 5, 10K, however long I planned on running. And yesterday, the African girls were like adamant that, yep, we want to run 72 minutes regardless of what the weather is. And the first thing they said was, you finished the marathon. And I'm like, no, we'll not be finishing the marathon. And then they point to Brady, you finished the marathon. No, I won't be finishing the marathon. 40K. No, I'm not going to 40K.
And she was putting pressure on us too. Like, yeah. And I think the only word she knew was 40K. Like, I was trying to explain other stuff to her, straight over her head. And my English isn't the best at the best of times. And then, like, yeah, just 40K. Like, being very aggressive. Unless it was a flirting style, I thought maybe for you, Croaks. But I'm not sure.
It's hard for him to resist.
Yeah.
But the you could have got yourself an extra few grand out of this, Croaks, if you did the right.
That's what he was trying to talk back to her about. Like, would you give additional payment, a private
Of
deal?
course he was.
And it was just, she didn't know what he was talking about.
You got to speak to the European agents, mate, not the athlete.
I was never going to 40K, but it does remind me of our first time doing it in
Yes, that's
2017. Right. We were coming up to, I think we were between 34 and 35K, and we were both going to finish at 35. And I gave the girl a bit of notice saying, we're finishing here at 35K. And she goes, no, you keep going. I pay you. And I'm like, well, we're going to try and work out some sort of contract here in this last 500 metres.
All of a sudden doesn't speak English at the finish line.
Anyway, warmed up, and I said to Brady as we were running laps around the pool, the aquatic centre, I was like, I actually feel pretty good, like, which obviously it's race day, there's more adrenaline, you're up for it, whereas if I was just going out to do a session, I'd probably be feeling miserable. The wind didn't seem too bad, and we got out really quick, like, I think we were 3:20 through the first K, and I'm like, Brady, just let's settle down, like, because the girls went out really quick.
Yeah, we had to work at that to get in front of them. That wasn't us banking time early.
Yeah.
That was us getting to the right spot.
And then I was still concerned at times that this headwind would be an issue, but it really wasn't. There were sections where it was noticeable, but it wasn't to the point that it really slowed you down that much. So we went through, and so our plan was to go 72 minutes, which is around 17 minutes per 5K, maybe a bit slower. So we were 17:04 through 5K, 16:49, and I'm definitely not as fit as when I've paced in the past. And so for me, it definitely felt more of like, probably couldn't enjoy it as much as I have in the past. It was a bit of sort of business, like serious face to make sure that I at least get to halfway, because pace never felt super comfortable. And then between 10 and 15K, we sort of came out onto the highway, and it got a little bit breezy, but we still, ran sub 17, 16:58. And then a few of the K markers seemed to be in the wrong place, because I was taking manual splits every 5K and then just memorising those 5 individual K splits, and Brady was actually lapping every single kilometre. And there was a couple there where it was like, he's like, oh, that one's 3:30, and then there was one that was 3:13, which we knew was completely wrong. We turned at the 18K mark, and as Moo said, like, we didn't really notice the massive tailwind. There was times when we sort of, it did feel more of like a crosswind at times. But yeah, once we got through halfway in 71:50, which was pretty much bang on.
71:55.
55.
That's pretty good. Like 5 seconds off over 21 Ks.
Yeah, but if I was a coach, I would be saying, hey, if anything, the first 18K is going to be pretty hard. Let's actually go a little bit slower through halfway to make sure that we have something for later on in the race.
Yeah, but our direction was from the race. Our good friends at the Gold Coast Marathon to hit 72.00 or as close to that as possible.
Yeah, so we ran 17:12 from 15 to 20k, and largely that was because I remember our first few years doing it. I was always really worried that, because in the big international marathons, they're pretty strict with, like, if you don't hit the pace within like 10, 15, 20 seconds, they won't pay you. So it used to be trying to hit it to the second. And I'm like, Brady, we're up here. We basically just need to like subtly slow the pace down so that we're not through halfway too much faster than what they wanted.
Forget the athlete here. This is about my paycheck.
But,
slow them down.
Well,
end their day.
But Moose, I've done this a few times where it's easy for them to still be on the pace right up your clacker, and then they get to 25k and they start to fade. So you are, in a way, thinking about the athlete as well, because it's easy for us to pick it up. Yeah.
Well, let's tell them what happened in the next 5k, Bradley.
In the next 5k, so it's like, all right, we've ticked off the 21k, so we've done our sort of first job. And then I reckon part of it was tailwind, part of it is when you're coming back through like Broadbeach and Surface.
A big part of it, and the only part of it, was Broadbeach crowds, and someone got a bit excited.
It was, yeah. Well, I knew, like, at that point, I'm like, I'm working pretty hard here. I reckon 25k is probably a good distance to go as a solid session, and then pull up well and be able to train next week.
So it was like kick-finish moose.
Empty the tank. Forget about those athletes again.
Yeah. And also, anytime I was starting to feel a bit rough, I found if I just focused on my form, then the pace picked up. But the crowds were crazy, and it definitely is worth like 5 seconds a K, like for not putting in much more effort at all. And then we get close to 25k, so we run 16:41 from 20 to 25.
Which is, that's quicker than I ran at Ballarat Marathon
So
when
it's
I broke 220.
3:20 pace.
Yeah. Marathon pace.
2:20 marathon pace. And then just before 25k, when I said to Brady, like, I think I'm going to pull the pin here, he's like, yeah, I'm fitter than you, and I'm finding this difficult, you should finish.
Which I thought was just a logical response. I was just looking after you.
No, I'll keep going another 5k. So, yeah, ran another 5 in 17:01, got to 30k, that was it. I was done then. Like, I'm glad I didn't have to run the last 12k. When Deke was given the rev-up speech before the start, he's like, the marathon starts at 30k, and I'm at like 29.5 going, I'm glad I'm not running the marathon. Stopped there, and then I basically went to the start line in a jacket and long tights with my race gear underneath, dumped that in Brady's bag so that at any point along the course, had my key in my pocket, I could just go straight back to my accommodation. I jumped on the light rail and headed home. Actually jumped into James Nipris, world champs rep in the steeple, so he's got a stress fracture of the sacrum, unfortunately, at the moment. So that was my morning. So 30k at 3:20.